Good afternoon, Poe fans, and welcome back to Poe Discussions with Carmen and Jeanie. Jeanie, how's it going today?
It's a little chilly, but a little sunshiny and a little on the eh day. But hey, it's another day. I'm here. I'm alive. We're all good.
That's right. Yes, we have gotten a little bit of snow and down south, and we're enjoying how beautiful it is, and almost pretending like it's Christmas all over again.
Yeah,
Well, we
we're
have
going to Christmas in January.
that's right.
Mhm.
Hey, that's exactly right. I still have my tree up. I'm taking it down tomorrow. So, well, we have a very special guest today with us, and her name is Sherrill Joseph, and we want to welcome her today. And Sherrill, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thank you, Carmen and Jeanie, for this opportunity. I'm honored. And Basically, I met Carmen and Jeanie through one of the nominees at Poe Fest
Mhm.
in Baltimore last October, and I was a nominee as well. In fact, I came out a winner. I'm so excited. I was one of the winners for the original work category. My
Well
certificates were handed.
deserved. Well deserved. Yes.
Thank you. For this book, for Jacaranda Street, Gravestone Image,
Mhm.
which of course is about Poe. And I um, I was a teacher for 35 years here in the San Diego Unified School District in Southern California.
Mhm.
And I love teaching. And the last couple years of my career, I started getting these ideas in my head for writing some children's mystery stories. And the four detectives, my four detectives were coming into my mind. And by the time I retired in 2013, I had their names in my head and I had pretty much the first book, the idea for the first book. So I retired and I gave myself a trip to Hawaii and a couple months off. And then I started writing in early 2014. I started writing my books and I'm writing number 7 right now.
Awesome.
So that's where I am. And my goals as a writer for children, because I love kids, kids are my life, I love them,
Mhm.
is to give them a fun read, most always mysteries, because that's my favorite genre from when I
Okay.
was a kid. And I want to give them opportunities to brush up on their reading comprehension skills through reading fun books. I also want to teach them that being smart and well-behaved and respectful can be cool, like my four detectives are. I try to
Mhm.
make them role models in my stories.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And what I do is I call my books Mysteries with a Twist of History because I always choose some element from the past for my contemporary, current day mysteries. And in the case of Jacaranda Street, of
Mhm.
course, it was about Edgar Allan Poe.
Mhm.
That's where we are.
All right. Well, what grade and subjects did you teach?
I taught for 35 years, and in those years, I taught every grade K-12. I had
Oh,
both
wow.
elementary and secondary credentials, so
Okay.
I moved around when I wanted to. Thought, oh, I'm tired of doing this. I'm going to go try something else. I'd change schools and grades. But my last 10 years were my best because I had fourth and fifth grade, which turned out to be my absolute favorite.
Oh, wow.
And I was a English major in college. And so
Mhm.
I mainly gravitated, of course, toward the literacy side of teaching. And I was fortunate those last 10 years. When I was teaching fourth and fifth grade to right next door, I had a teacher named Barb, and
Mhm.
Barb and I teamed up. We became team teachers, and she did all the math, science, social studies. And then halfway through the day, we would flip flop our classes, and I would do all the literacy activities. So I didn't have to worry about so we could go into depth with our teaching.
That's
And so I did
awesome.
a lot of reading, writing, vocabulary, critical thinking,
Hmm.
all that spelling, all that stuff with the students. And I loved it. And that helped, I think, launch my career in my second career, which actually is more of a hobby, into
Mhm.
writing now.
Okay. And one thing I will say from reading Jacaranda Street is I loved, because it's the first one I've read. I'm planning on going back and reading all of them
Thank,
because
thank
as I
you.
told Cheryl, I wished I had these as a child because I would have been all about this because mysteries were my favorite. And I mean, I've read all of Agatha Christie, and
There they
this would
are.
have been, yay, this would have been all I would have just, read them up like crazy.
Oh,
But
thank you.
one of the things I loved, not, the book was fantastic, but I also loved the fact that with vocabulary words that you would explain them, the characters would explain them
Mhm.
throughout. And I just think that's so important because some writers, adult, for adult fiction as well as young adult fiction,
Mhm.
they don't necessarily do that. And I'm an English teacher as well.
Oh,
And
nice. I love
so
that.
I'm in year 21 right now, and I have
Oh, good for
freshman
you.
English. And then
Uh-huh.
I've taught history before. Jeannie has taught all subjects in middle school, high school, and
Good.
kind of, yeah. So we're right there
Wonderful.
with the teaching aspect.
Wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, but I just loved that you do that because again, a lot of writers don't do that. Did you feel like that was kind of like a teaching moment for you?
I can't stop being a teacher. That's my
Yeah,
problem. Or blessing. Um,
Amen.
yeah, I can't stop. I love teaching. I retired because I thought it's time to do something else, which was called writing. So I did. But yeah, I have two characters in my books, who help with that. One is Bruce Wilding. He's the kid's tutor
hmm
because the kids travel all around the world solving mysteries. And so he goes with them to keep their skills up.
hmm
And so he, of course, that gives me opportunities to do teaching moments about Edgar Allan Poe or whoever the historical figure or historical place is that I'm talking about. And then
Okay.
the other character is the chief detective, Lanny Wyatt. And Lanny, he's called, they call him the Brainiac, director, leader of their detective agency, and he loves vocabulary and he's always trying to teach the kids new words. And his best friend Moki, one of the other detectives, doesn't like it when Moki accidentally says something like, "Oh, what's that mean?" And then Lanny starts to launch into this big explanation about it, and they're all like rolling their eyes, like enough, that kind of thing. So I try to make it fun, but the other reason I do it is because kids their comprehension can get bogged down if they're
Absolutely.
stumbling on
Mhm.
words. And of course, we like them to use dictionaries, but they don't tend to do that as much as we would like, and
I
that's just the
agree.
reality of it. So I
Yeah.
decided I'm going to give them some help. So I try to do sometimes some pronunciation, sometimes some meanings,
hmm
that kind of thing in the books.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since you're talking about some of the characters, do you want to give us a little bit more about the other detectives, just so
Hmm.
people can hear about them
Hmm.
as well?
Okay. Yeah, of course, Lanny and Moki, they're the boy characters. They're all 13. In fact, they're forever 13. Like Nancy Drew is forever 18. My detectives are forever 13. And so Lanny is the head of it. Moki is his best friend. Moki arrived in Las Palmitas, which is a fictional little Southern California ocean resort town where they
Okay.
live. And he lived in Hawaii and he came to California with his father 5 years before. The other characters are Lexi, and Lexi is Lanny's twin sister.
Okay.
And her best friend is Rani, like Maharani, Rani, and
Mhm.
she's from India. And she came from India to Las Palmitas 8 years ago. So the kids are all either, brother, sister, or they're all friends.
Okay.
And so so I did that because I wanted to capture both the male and, the boy and girl audience. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, Nancy Drew, I love Nancy Drew. It tended to get the girls. Hardy Boys tended to get the boys. I
Yeah.
wanted to get something that might appeal to both genders or all genders. And so that's what I did. And
Yeah.
that's where that comes from. But oh, the kids are very smart. They're very tech savvy. I'm not, but they are. I've learned a lot from them, which I'm laughing about, but it's really true
Oh,
because
that's
I've had
awesome.
to. And Ronnie's the most athletic of them. She's the smallest, but she's like the runner. She's the fast one. Lexi's kind of the emotional one who likes literature and anything with literature or stories.
Mm-hmm.
And Moki is like he's a surfer and very athletic, and he's sort of the comic relief of the group. He's always saying funny things. And then Lanny's the very serious one, who the vocabulary, guy. So,
Yeah.
um, and he comes up with the ideas. He's very smart. He's the one who kind of calls the direction for the group.
Yeah, and I think you kind of alluded in the book that I read about that he's kind of he likes to play Sherlock Holmes kind of.
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
Yes, he does.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love the characters. I think they work so well together, and it is really neat that you did incorporate both, multiple genders. That way, anybody that picks up the book, you're whatever you're looking for, you're going to get.
I
And
hope so. Well, thank you for that.
absolutely, because I know that sometimes, like with our curriculum, it tends to be more heavily driven towards girls, and
Hmm.
thankfully
Hmm.
with our curriculum for ninth grade, we do have a lot of things that reach out to boys as well, because like Lord of the Flies is included, but
Oh
the
yeah.
girls like it too.
Oh yeah.
But it really is, we've got a pretty diverse curriculum, but I've taught with some in years past that it's like all girl focused, and it's like,
Yeah.
come on now, let's add something else.
Yes. I know what you're saying, because when I was teaching, I would have book club groups, like guided reading groups, we call them, but I call them book clubs. And I would usually they were usually based on the kids' reading levels, but
Yeah.
invariably I'd have like half and half, girls and boys. And
Hmm.
trying to find a book that they both liked, both groups
Yes.
liked, was not always easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Jeannie, do you have any questions so far?
Well, I did like how she brought up the relationships of Franklin W. Dixon and Carol King with the Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys,
Yeah.
because those were the things that I grew up reading.
Yes.
Because I even did my first master's thesis on the formulaic fiction of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys,
Ooh. Ooh.
because they are, I mean, majority of them were written by ghostwriters, as
Hmm.
you know, because Franklin
Right.
W. Dixon, Carol Keene, they are the same person.
Exactly.
Simon and Schuster
Yeah.
was just putting them under a different pseudonym, but they
Right.
were written by the same group of
Yeah.
ghostwriters.
That
Mhm.
So,
Stratemeyer Syndicate, I think, was the group.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Hmm.
so, and it's good that when you've got this type of book, you are combining those aspects that were so phenomenal in those books of the early 19th century and early
Hmm.
20th, not 19th, 20th century.
20th,
Sorry,
right.
I went way back
1900s.
to Edgar Allan
You really
Poe because I was like,
did.
wait a minute, okay. Even
Oh,
though,
that's
Poe
okay.
had some instinct there, because with the murders in the Rue Morgue and stuff like that, when he was bringing in the detective, it's,
Yes.
and then when you had the 20th century with Agatha Christie, but then you had the young
Hmm.
adults with like the Bobbsey twins, then
Yes.
came the Hardy Boys, then came Nancy Drew. So in your series, you are actually taking all the main aspects of what made those so sought after by young adults, and you've put them all into one, and you're leading the new generation into that same avenue, but you're giving them a wider berth to
Yeah.
learn from. So
Thank you.
you're getting their juices flowing, so to speak, with that critical of wanting to know things, and that's the one thing that I think a lot of students have lost,
Right.
because even
Yeah.
though that being tech savvy, there's nothing wrong with that. But as I would always discuss with, I'm a retired teacher also now, but as I would discuss with the teachers like Carmen and the ones my friends that are still teaching, sometimes technology is being used too much.
Yeah.
It's not being used as
Hmm.
the tool that it was meant to be. It's more
Well,
being used like
yeah,
that's all it
exactly.
is. So,
I take technology out of their hands on
yeah.
occasions. For
Yeah.
in my book six, Eucalyptus Street, excuse me,
Hmm.
Upas Street,
Hmm.
Shocking Spectre. I take the cell phones out of their hands as well as their laptops because they're in a little valley and there's no reception.
Oh,
Nice.
So they
okay.
have to figure things out without that. And they're good about that. They're not the kind of kids who are hooked on, on their phones, like their phones are not in their faces
Right.
24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad to me that there are a lot of kids who are,
Yeah,
but they are not. And
absolutely.
that's another thing I'm trying to have them be role models for that. Hey, there's a world out there. Open your eyes, put your phone
Yeah.
down, open your eyes and look at three-dimensional objects out there in the
Hmm.
world and people. And then my in my current book that I'm writing right now, number 7, it's called
Mm-hmm.
uh it just went out of my head.
It's okay.
Macadamia Street,
Ooh,
a hidden skeleton. And this time they're going to Cornwall to solve a
Nice.
mystery. And
okay.
it involves pirates from the golden age of piracy back in the early 1800s.
Oh, fun.
And uh, I researched about what's reception like on Cornwall. Turns out they have terrible internet reception and cell
Oh,
phone
wow.
reception on Cornwall, especially as you get closer to the water. And so there's going to be another opportunity for them to have to use on other means to solve mysteries in this
Oh,
in this story.
okay.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful. And
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, thank
and
you.
there's nothing wrong with that. That's another thing about you're bringing the aspect of where it's okay if you don't have that internet or that phone, or there are other aspects, other ways of
Hmm.
finding
Mm-hmm.
out things and communicating with other people. That's another thing. Being able to talk. That's before I
Hmm.
retired. That's the one thing that drove me crazy about my kids in the classroom. It's like they didn't know how to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or
And
they were
so,
afraid to maybe because they're not used to being face to face with somebody.
That is
And they
exactly.
don't have the time that they can spend when they're doing a text or an email,
Yeah.
Mhm.
to write something. So yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, and
Yeah.
these books, I can foresee that these books being a way of crossing a threshold, allowing the kids to see that it's okay that there's two sides to everything, not just for,
Right.
finding out things, but two sides to every story, two sides to technology. It gives them a wide open space to where they can say, oh, okay, I can do that.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I'm saying I try to make my 4 detectives relatable.
Hmm.
And I try sometimes like Lanny is very knowledgeable about many things. And
Mm-hmm.
I often worry that that's going to turn kids off,
Hmm.
instead of turning them on. So that's where Moki comes in and he makes jokes about things. And then the other kids jump in and they say something, or one of them will say, Lanny, that's really cool that you know that, Lanny. They'll say things like that to him. I really admire you for that. Don't be afraid to say who you are. They have conversations like
Absolutely.
that. Because that's what kids need. My daughter's a child psychologist, or she's a clinical psychologist, and she does
Okay.
have teenagers up as clients. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've heard her tell me some just, generic stories about some things. And as a teacher, of course, and having raised my daughter myself.
Hmm.
So yeah, these are things that kids need. They
They
need that
absolutely do.
communication.
They definitely do.
Yeah.
I try to
Yeah.
do try to fit in a lot of group work where they are giving feedback to each other. They're peer editing
Hmm.
things, and I love it when I'm walking around listening to their conversations and adding some things in or asking them questions, and
Yeah.
they are kind of giving some affirmation about things that they do well, but also constructive criticism done
Hmm.
professionally, because I tell them, if
Hmm.
I hear you say something really derogatory that's not needed, I'm gonna, pull you aside and say so.
Right.
And it warms my heart when they are giving those things like you do this really well. And
Uh-huh.
it makes me really happy that they do that.
And it's good that
That's
your
wonderful.
character is showing that it's okay to be accepted, whether you are, extremely smart, whether you're
Hmm.
athletic,
Yeah.
whether,
Hmm.
you like
You're a comedian.
comedies or
Yeah.
Yeah.
gothic or whatever. Because I remember when, in the 70s and 80s, when, back in the day, as we like to say, growing
Hmm.
up, uh, it was very hard because sometimes you had to hide who you were if you wanted to be accepted with the
True.
other friends.
That's
And
true.
even today they're still facing that same kind of
Right. Exactly.
ridicule
Hmm.
about
Well, I
things.
have, that's one of the reasons, like I made Ronnie very athletic because,
Mhm.
and she and Lexi are both almost fearless. They're fearless.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it's usually Moki that wants to hold back. Like Moki's afraid of graveyards. He's afraid of his own shadow,
Yeah.
but the
Wasn't it
girls are
snakes
not.
too? He's afraid of
Yeah.
snakes.
I'm sorry. Oh, he's
Was
afraid
it
of snakes. Yeah.
snakes? Yes.
There weren't any in Hawaii, and now he's in California. He's running into rattlesnakes right and left. And it's like,
Yeah.
and so the girls are go-getters,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they're the ones who are first out the door running after somebody.
Yep.
And Ronnie a lot of times says, "Where are you guys? Come on, what you waiting for? Let's get going," and that kind of thing. So I want to empower girls that way. Like,
Nice.
don't hold
Absolutely.
back. Don't be afraid of who you are.
Hmm.
Jump on out there and go for it. That's what I'm trying to help them see through my characters as well.
Absolutely. Well, and you do a fantastic job with that. You
Well,
really do.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
One other thing I really loved about Jacaranda Street as well, and and again, not having read the other ones, and I was going to ask if you do this in the other books, is the interactive parts of you have the cryptograms in there, and I love how you pause and say, try to figure this out yourself and
Yeah.
basically don't cheat, look at what they're doing, try
Yep.
to figure it
Yep.
out, and then see how they figure it out. I loved
Yep.
that.
I started doing that in book 5. I hadn't done that before. I'm not
Okay.
sure why I started doing that. It's something just occurred to me, like get the kids involved, make this more interactive. And so that's what I did. And
Yeah.
then in book 6, this Yuba Street one,
Hmm.
I have Easter eggs in this book. You know,
Oh,
Easter eggs, you know what those
yes.
are, right?
Oh,
I'm not
yeah.
talking about the
Oh
ones with
Yes.
chocolate ones. I'm talking about like in movies, like when you see a little something on the
yeah.
wall in
The
a house.
superheroes ones. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like in Disney movies, there's all kinds of little
Uh-huh.
Easter eggs in there. Like you see a Mickey Mouse or a Donald Duck or somebody like up on a wall, and it's not made to look important, but kids will go, "Oh my gosh, there's like, oh, that's from Aladdin," or something like that.
Yeah.
And those are Easter eggs. So I put those in the book in book 6 as well. And then in the back,
Nice.
that's sort of Lanny's giving them that assignment at the beginning of the book.
Okay.
Look for Easter eggs, and here you need to watch these movies first because that'll help you. These like
Okay.
spooky movies from Universal Horror Pictures, you need because that's what the book's kind of about.
Okay.
And then at the
Okay.
end of the book, he reveals the Easter eggs in the story to them. So
That's
they're
neat.
not kept, they're not kept wondering, like, there it is, there, Easter eggs cracked.
Oh, I love it.
So
That's great.
he tells them, did you find it? Here it is.
Yeah.
So it reinforces because the book is about learning about the movies and the actors and the special effects from back 100 years ago,
Okay.
practically.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, and I
Yeah.
mean, and the cryptograms were so Poe-esque because of,
Yeah.
the gold bug, him putting them, in the newspaper and
Yeah.
solving the ones that people would send in. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it just that just made me just really happy.
I guess Paul Baltimore agreed with you because they gave me this.
Yes.
So, and that. So
Yes. Oh,
I was thrilled.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, Jeannie, what other questions do you have?
I I think I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about because you
Okay.
told us about how you got into writing, which as a teacher I can definitely see that because
Yeah.
what better way to know about your audience is to live it, being a
Hmm.
teacher every day
Oh,
Hmm.
yes.
and loving literature and growing up.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't remember a time I didn't know how to read. That's how much
Yeah.
I love reading since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I
and seeing,
remember when I didn't know how to read. I remember struggling to read when I was in early elementary grades.
Hmm.
And finally, when I got to 4th grade, I discovered Nancy Drew.
nice.
And Nancy Drew made me a better reader. because I
Okay.
couldn't get, in fact, I have them behind me in this bookcase. I have all 58 of the
Mm-hmm.
books
Oh, nice.
that I purchased with my own money as a kid, and I still have them
Hmm.
because she left such a big impression upon me. And
Yeah.
as a 9-year-old, I said to myself, someday I'm going to write kids' mystery novels.
That
So
Very
that's
nice.
that's really where it started. And then, of course, I went into teaching because I had to make a living.
yes.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
now I can do what I want to do. So,
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, and I was going to ask if writing was something that came about when you were younger, and so
oh
you
yeah.
my question. Yeah.
In fact, I used to write little mysteries for her, for Nancy Drew and her friends. And sometimes I would stop and I would write down, I would take a piece of paper and write, no, Nancy, don't go down those steps. It's dangerous. You're going to get hurt down there, this kind of thing, But of course she'd go down anyway and prove me wrong. And so it was fun. I really interacted with her as a character in the books. And she was almost like my big sister to me when I
Okay.
was growing up. It was great.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So, with your writing process, do you like whenever you're developing your next book, do you have a certain way you go about it?
Mm-hmm. I usually publish a book in September or October, and then I
Okay.
take from October to January to research my next book.
Okay.
I do a lot of research online. I, talk to people if I need to do that.
Mhm.
I read stories, and then in January I start writing the next book. In fact, I just started book 7 on the 7th, just the other day. So
Nice.
I'm in the
Nice.
process of that.
Okay.
And of course, while I'm writing, I'm still researching. It's kind of a never-ending process. You discover something that you didn't look up. And for example, the kids are going to take a train from London to Penzance in Cornwall. And I thought,
Mhm.
well, how are they going to do that? So I had to research that the other day because I'd totally forgotten to do that. So there's
Okay.
constantly things coming up. And what I do is, I'm not somebody who tends to outline every little detail because
Mhm.
I like it to flow. I like it to be organic and happen as it's going to happen. So what I try to do is I just put myself in. I become the fifth detective,
Yeah.
and I try to imagine what kind of adventures might they have to go on, because here's the mystery. So what do they have to do to get
Hmm.
to the end to solve it? And it has to make sense.
Yeah.
So then those become my chapter titles. And I try to come up with 20 chapter titles, things that would
Okay.
logically happen from beginning to end. And
Hmm.
then sometimes I go back and I put little, like a little description of what I think might happen in that chapter.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, as I start to write, everything starts to get, like, some comes out, new stuff comes in. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how it works for me. And I like to do that because I kind of see myself as just being a scribe for the detectives. I feel
Yeah.
like they're with me and they're talking to me and I'm just writing down what they're saying.
That's really a neat way to go about writing. Yeah.
And it really honestly feels that way. And it's a really fun, adventurous, creative process.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it makes sense because it's like you're experiencing them and they're experiencing you in the
Mhm.
process.
Mhm.
So, and it works because you are essentially the story. And so it's coming from you and
Yeah.
you're building them and they're
Right.
building, your own imagination. So they're like the extensions of your imaginary friends. And
Yes,
you're,
they are. I
Yeah.
kind of
yeah,
think of them as my four other kids.
Yeah.
exactly.
But I had one daughter, but I have these four others now. Uh,
Yep.
Exactly.
but right around December, early December, I can hear them. They're starting to whisper in my ear or tap on my
Mhm.
shoulder. Come on, it's time to get the next book going.
Mm.
And during December, I feel that from them. I feel
Yeah.
that, yeah, they're urging me to get to the computer and start. So like I said, in early January, I usually start, and that's been my process for all the books so far. So
Yeah. That
Wonderful.
that I
yeah.
was going to say that sounds like a great process because you've been successfully writing. You're now on your number seventh book,
Hmm.
so that's really cool.
Yeah. Thanks.
So going back to Poe,
Yes.
so how did Poe come in your life?
Oh,
Like what age? Like,
okay.
yeah, we always say, well, this is one of the questions we always like to ask everybody.
Yeah. Poe came into my life late. He came into my life when I was in college.
Okay.
And probably my first year of college, and I was taking a 19th century, literature survey course or something. And I
Hmm.
had this wonderful professor, and he loved Poe. And in fact, I ended up taking like a just all Poe class from him, I think
Oh,
like a
nice.
year or so later.
Hmm.
And he was wonderful, and he taught me some intricacies of Poe. For example, he tried to tell the class that Poe is not just an author that you trot out for Halloween.
Yes.
He is an author who is deeper than that.
Hmm.
And so he taught me this term called the outre, that Poe sought for the outre, which is a French word that I guess means like another beyond, like another world,
Hmm.
the other. And so he said Poe was so depressed in his life because he had lost so many loved ones, especially the women in his life, like his mother, his wife, a number of other females that were in his life.
Yeah.
And he was distraught and most of the time. And he wrote to try to relieve the anxiety and the depression and the sadness that he bore from that,
Hmm.
thinking that if he could attain the other, like this, a spiritual world, that maybe that would help him in his real life. And
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that a lot of people don't know about him. And so I wanted
Very true.
one of the reasons I used Poe for the story was because I wanted to introduce kids to Poe much earlier than I met
Hmm.
him. And
Yeah.
secondly, I wanted to dispel this notion about him being just some kind of an author who skulks around graveyards at midnight or something, because he never did that. But
Mhm.
this one of his detractors foisted that myth onto the world, and it still is there today. And so that's another reason I wrote the book. I wanted to tell the truth about Poe for kids.
Absolutely.
So
Hmm.
that's where that came from.
Yeah, that I think the way you did that in the book, I just every time I'd read something that you wrote about Poe, I'm like, it's all correct. It's all
Oh, thank you,
correct. It's
thank you.
actual
Well,
information.
I had a professor at a college in New York, New York City, who I was consulting with, and she's a Poe
Ah,
expert. She's written a number of books about it, so I was tapping her brain quite a bit because the last thing I want to do with children is give them fake news or false
right.
information,
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah. And then they will
so,
question about it too. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I want to be correct. Yeah.
Yes. Um, so, and this is always a second question we always ask is, so what is your favorite Poe short story or poem? Some people have one of each, and some people there's just like one definitive thing,
Okay.
one that defines like, oh, this is my favorite.
Okay. Well, I have. Oh my gosh. Let's see.
If you've got a couple, feel free to talk
Well, I
about it.
have
Yeah.
three. I
Oh,
have
awesome.
I have
Okay.
three that come to mind that are my favorite stories.
Okay.
Um, the premature burial that
Yes.
he wrote late in life. I loved that story. That just put goosebumps down my spine.
Absolutely.
And then I liked Ligeia because it was her character was just talk about an interesting female character. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. And then the fall of the House of Usher, where he uses the house as a symbol for aging and degradation and your mental capacity,
Yeah.
deteriorating. The house deteriorated along with them. I mean, I thought that was, and I really love, I think in a former life I was an architect because I love architecture and windows and staircases and things like
Yeah.
that. So when I read that story, that I picked up on that right away. Oh my gosh, architecture and your emotions, And so
Yeah.
I love those are my three favorites. And then if
Okay.
I if I want you want my three favorite poems,
Sure.
of course, The
Sure.
Raven,
Oh,
that's probably
yes.
everybody's favorite. The Bells,
The
because of
Bells
the
is wonderful.
onomatopoeia in the story, the
Hmm.
clanging of the bells, the ringing of the bells, all that. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
And another one that's probably not as well known to many people is called The Haunted Palace.
That one is really good.
And
Yes.
he incorporated that poem into The Fall of the House of Usher. He made it one of the songs that Roderick Usher sang in the
Hmm.
story to one of the guest that was there.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting that he put one of his poems actually into the story like that.
Yeah,
So
I always enjoyed him doing that because
yeah,
it's just like an extra little piece of Poe
yeah.
that you get, and it's and now you can kind of read it separately, but it's really fun
Mhm.
to read it within the story.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, we always like asking both of those questions because some people kind of got to know Poe sixth, seventh grade, in junior high or middle school, depending on how old you are, or high school. And
Hmm.
it's always everyone has their own unique story. And then also the people's favorites of stories or poems or both it's sometimes similar, sometimes it's very different. And so
Mhm.
it's just a really interesting thing to see what appeals to people.
Well, I played up the Raven in Jacaranda Street
Yeah.
uh, because not well, of course, there's the Raven on the tombstone
Hmm.
there, but
Yeah.
because that's the one that children tend to learn
First, yeah,
first and
absolutely.
maybe only,
Hmm.
depending on how much a teacher will teach it.
Yeah.
Um, but and then, of course, in the story, I have a Raven called Mr. Nevermore
Yeah,
in the
I
story.
loved that. I love that character.
Well, the man, Mr. Kirby, who hired the kids to solve this mystery, has this big estate called Ravenswood out in the
Mhm.
country, and it's the trees are full of ravens. And he has a pet, and he named him Rex because ravens are big birds.
Yeah.
And the kids come, and they're saying they meet him because he's tapping at the window, like to get
Mhm.
in at the kitchen window, which is from the Raven. And so the kids go, Lexi, of course, the one who loves litter, she goes, "Oh, that's just like in the Raven, the Raven wants to get in and everything." So she says, "I'm going to call you Mr. Rex Nevermore. Is that okay?" And so Mr. Kirby says, "As long as it's okay with Rex, it's okay with me," or something like that.
Nice.
So they renamed the bird. And the bird becomes their friend during the mystery and helps them out.
Absolutely. I was
Yeah.
almost hoping in a way that he would go home with them.
Oh.
In a way, I was like, this would be a cool little twist. And, but then I was like, well, he might need to stay with Mr. Kirby.
Well, the kids all have their own pets. Lanny and Lexi, if you like in book one, I introduced the pets. Um,
Okay.
because books one and two, they're like in their neighborhood. So, I
Gotcha.
could tell more
Okay.
about the stuff at home.
Yeah.
And they have a cat and a dog. And Moki has a minor bird, and Ronnie has a California desert tortoise.
Oh,
So
nice.
they all kind of have their own pets. And in the back of my mind, I kind of thought, I know they could take me, that'd be kind of fun. But I thought, no, leave him in nature, leave him where he lives,
Yeah.
leave him out there
Absolutely.
because Mr. Kirby, that's not his normal home. He goes out every weekend to keep up. It's the family's estate. He goes out there to keep it up. And
Yeah.
Rex always comes and visits them out there from that,
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
yeah, and he played a neat role in the book.
he did. He had some interesting little things he did, didn't he?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. And I was going to say, I'm trying not to give spoilers away.
Yeah.
So,
I'm trying not to either.
oh, I know it. Let's see. I was trying to think of other things. So, with, I know you said that like when you got into writing, definitely mystery was the genre, that because that was what you have really loved. Have you
Mhm.
ever thought about writing in any other genres besides mystery?
I really haven't.
Okay.
I do like nonfiction because for my mystery writing, I usually read a biography of someone. Like for my book, Six, the one that has to do with Universal Studios, I read a book about Ken Strickfaden, who's the one who designed all of that machinery that brought the monster alive, all the
Oh, neat.
flashing things.
Okay.
And then in the Poe one, I read the definitive biography of Poe
Hmm.
by Quinn.
Yes, I
And
actually have just ordered that. That's one of the biographies
uh,
I haven't read,
oh
and
my gosh, it's
I,
quite a
I've
book.
I've heard it's yeah, it's yes, I've heard
Yes.
it's
I
like
mean, it
you
was
have to
written
read it.
like in 37 or 47 or somewhere
Yeah,
back then, and
yeah.
it's still considered the definitive biography of Poe.
Hmm.
And then for book seven, I'm writing right now because it's set in Cornwall. I read a biography about Daphne du Maurier,
Oh, nice.
who lived there, and
Hmm.
I got a wonderful kernel of a mystery idea that from that book that I've incorporated into my book.
Oh, neat.
So I love biography because it's I read because of history. I love
Hmm.
history. So I read biography or nonfiction that pertains to history. But as far as wanting to write it, I would rather take it into fiction for kids,
Yeah,
like I'm
no, that
doing.
that makes perfect
That
sense.
that twisted
Definitely.
history thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think English and history go so hand in hand because when I was trying to decide on like my degree path in college, I ended up getting a, major in history, but then I minored in English and almost had enough classes to do both because
Oh,
I couldn't decide. I love
yeah.
both of them.
Yes. Yes. It's fascinating.
It
History's
is.
fascinating. And that's one of the reasons I do my twist of history is because I noticed when I taught elementary school that the kids were fascinated by history, but for something happened when they got to middle school or high school, they suddenly got turned off. I think they were more interested in what's going on right in front of them, their own
Yeah.
lives and figuring out their own lives to deal with the past. And so I thought there's a gap here. I want to keep that love of history going for kids
Hmm.
and teach them about, like, my book four is about World War II and the Japanese
Okay.
internment camps and that kind of thing, and goes on and on. So I'm trying to help them see that those pioneers, historical
Absolutely.
pioneers, are
Hmm.
why we have what we have now.
Yes.
Like especially special effects. Special effects started in the late 1800s,
That's true.
believe
Mhm.
it or
Yeah.
not, in Hollywood. And so I
Yeah.
did a lot of research on all of that, and even color movies started in the late 1800s, but they were so expensive and time consuming that they didn't start using it right away.
Oh,
But it's
yeah.
things like that kids, we take for granted the special effects in the color movies, but it all had to start somewhere. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it might be enriching for them to know the past of it, you
Oh,
know?
I highly agree with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know
Thank you.
Jeannie would too, because she taught history for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing that was always a struggle, especially once you get out of the elementary ages, is that you go to that specificity when you get to the middle and the higher grades,
Yeah.
to where it's not so broad to where you're
Right.
teaching one specific. And I think
Right.
a lot of teachers kind of struggle because they're trying to teach the past, but they don't know how to bring it to the present.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And tying it to real world uh,
Yes.
happenings is
Hmm.
very difficult to get the
Hmm.
kids attached.
Right.
So adding it into your writing that they're going to read and letting them know that, oh, this is what happened in history, but this is what came out of it
Mhm.
that they can see into modern times
Yes.
is a bridge that needed to be gapped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, too many kids say, like, well, history's that's done. It's over. Like, why do I have to know
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like, oh my
no.
gosh, it makes your life so much richer if you did, and
Yeah.
Exactly.
make things
Hmm.
more meaningful. And so that's one of my big goals in my writing is to bring that across to them.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I agree. That is very wonderful because
Thank you.
they need it.
I
They
think so.
do, and they do that with me sometimes when I'm given background information on
Yes.
something we're about to read or an
Yeah.
author, and I'm like, if you don't know where the author comes from, you won't understand the story or the book we're
Exactly.
going to read.
Hmm.
You'll know it better. And because they're like, well, no, I just want to read the story. It's like, no, you're going to hear about
Mm-mm.
this and you might surprise yourself.
Well, historical and social contexts are so important for kids.
Absolutely.
Whenever we would start a book, I would always start with that as
Yeah.
well. So I applaud you for doing that with
Well,
them.
thank you.
That's so important to do.
Well,
I do. I agree.
Yeah,
and the point is that culture itself is not just one thing. Culture is made up of 16 different aspects. It's not just one thing. And a
Right.
lot of people don't realize that
Yeah.
to create a culture, it has to encompass a lot.
It
And if
does.
you don't know about all those different things, then you're not getting a full view of what the culture
Hmm.
really is.
Exactly. Totally agree with that. Like when I
So,
read book four, the Saffron Street Island Danger, that dealt with Pearl Harbor and the
hmm
Japanese internment camps.
Hmm.
Um, you know, uh, I wanted kids to, I wanted kids to safely uh,
yes,
learn about the Japanese internment camps because I didn't learn about that also till I was in college. For some reason, the textbooks left that out.
Yes.
Well, I probably know why,
Yes.
but they left it
oh yeah,
out.
Same
It
with
was
me. Same with me.
That
Hmm.
was they were cleansed of that stuff, and then I learned about it. I said, "Oh my God, I didn't know that happened to the Japanese people,"
Hmm.
and I was just appalled that not only for that, but the fact that I hadn't didn't learn it till then. And so I
Exactly.
wanted kids to know that, and because that's part of the Japanese culture to this day, as you're saying,
hmm
Absolutely.
it
Hmm.
makes up who they are, how they see themselves, and how they comport themselves in our country,
Hmm.
well, their country if they live here, but if they're just visiting it here in this country, and when we go
Yeah,
to their country, how we comport ourselves in their country, and all those
yeah.
things. So, yes.
exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
that is important.
Reciprocity. Yeah. The reciprocity needs to be understood, especially with the different cultures. And then we're a global society now.
Yes, we are.
We're not just the United States of America.
Right.
We're as a whole, the world. And the
Exactly.
more everybody knows about what goes on in the rest of the world and how, whether their culture is accepted or not, you still need to understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and because the way I look at it is if I'm just going to read a poem and not tell the kids a little backstory or history or about the author, I'm basically it's like reading something or hearing a conversation and taking one thing out of context that you can totally misinterpret the whole meaning.
Right.
And it's
Exactly.
like I always tell kids, you have to remember the context of when things were written, and we've got to know all about the things all around it before we get
Mm-hmm.
to the meat of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's
Well,
really
it
important.
is. I'm so glad you do that.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Uh,
like when I told the kids, if I read something or I'm teaching something and you're still asking the question why, then I haven't given you enough information. Or
yeah.
if you've
Mm-hmm.
written me something and I can still say why,
Mm-hmm.
why, there's more you need to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that a lot of the kids in today's society have lost is the question why.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or how to question.
Yes,
Exactly. How to question why.
How to question. How, when, where, why, what, how come, which
Exactly.
one, all that. But
exactly.
yeah, all of that's so important for
Mhm.
kids to learn all those things. And isn't it fun as a teacher to show your humanity to kids, to say that things like
Mhm.
you said, Jeannie, like I didn't do my job if you don't know, if you're still asking why, I
Yes,
didn't do my
Exactly.
job. And kids like that. They
they
they they
do.
like to know that the teacher can make mistakes and that we're human beings too.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because some of them I've had them ask me specific questions about like something we're studying, and it's like very detailed, and I might not know every little detail. And they're like, "Well, you're supposed to know everything about this subject." And I said, "No." I said, "Usually teachers have certain specialties that they know a lot about, and
Mhm.
they know a glossing over of many other things, but sometimes you got to do your research. And so if you ask me a specific question, I'll be very honest and say, I'm not sure, but I'll look it up for you."
Right. Right.
And it's like, yeah, I think it shocks them sometimes that
Hmm.
we're not robots and that we actually are human.
What I did when I was right before I retired in 2013, I had my cell phone on my desk. And the kids were not allowed to have their cell phones on or
Right.
out.
Yes.
And these were fourth and fifth graders. And so if I didn't know something, somebody would ask a question, I go, gosh, I don't know the answer to that. And I'd say, who'd like to come up and get my phone and be the first to find the answer? you know, oh my gosh, like everybody was suddenly interested. And then, of course, that made somebody a hero who found the answer,
Right,
to the
right.
teacher that the question the teacher didn't know the answer to.
Yeah.
So that
Oh,
was
that's
fun.
fun.
That was a
Yeah,
fun thing to do too. But yeah, we have to
absolutely.
make ourselves human to kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, one of the other things you did in Jacaranda Street was at the end, you shared a poem that you wrote.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And you did a great job. You
Oh,
did a great
thanks.
job.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Is that like, have you written a lot of poetry, a little poetry, or?
I haven't written any poetry for a long time, but I
Okay.
got so steeped in Poe when I was researching and of course writing the book that I thought I'm going to try my hand at trying to write like Poe. I know there's a lot of contests out there where you can do that kind of thing,
Yeah.
write like so and so author, write a story about like Hemingway would or something. So that
Right.
I'm going to, without insulting him too badly, or parading my ignorance too much, I'm going to take my hand at trying to write like Poe. And it
Yeah.
was challenging because I didn't want to make it too off-putting to kids and their parents at the same time.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I tried to write that, his last real true work.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I
Which
thought
of
it was
course isn't.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because we in April to celebrate National Poetry Month, we actually do have a poetry contest called Poet
Mm.
Like Poe, and it's for
Oh,
adults and youth may enter.
oh,
We have
cool.
adult category and we have youth category, and
Uh-huh.
so we encourage, a lot, especially like we get a lot of adult submissions. Youth, we are getting like more and more each
Oh,
year.
good.
And so we love to see the youth really, put their hand to writing poetry similar to Poe. So
It's a great way also not only to teach an author or a poet, but to
mhm,
make it memorable. Keep it like
absolutely.
cemented in their heads that, oh, I'm
Yeah,
never going to forget this poet because of this project we did or something to that extent. So
absolutely.
yeah, that's
Absolutely.
wonderful. I'm so happy you do that.
Yeah, well,
Poet like
thank
Poe.
you.
Love it. Poet like Poe.
Well, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners and viewers?
I would like to share one thing that it's not a big secret of mine, but
Right.
because I do share it sometimes in my author's note in the back of the book.
Hmm.
But I am a synesthete. You ever
Okay.
heard of that? It's somebody who
No,
has
like, oh,
synesthesia.
okay.
And the easiest way to explain it is it's like when you're born, you have extra connections in your brain between senses that aren't normally connected. So
Okay.
when you see something like let's say you see the word Monday,
Okay.
you might see red because
Okay.
to you the word Monday is red. And that's probably the easiest, the most common type of synesthesia. It's this the color one or the musical note one, where some people will see music in color or musical notes on a page in color.
Okay.
I have a very rare form. It's called lexical gustatory, and what that means is that when I see or hear a word, I taste or smell something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
Like,
you did that with Ronnie in the book.
yes, and
Yes.
Ronnie, that's
Yes.
not an accident that Ronnie's the cynic, because she and I are the same. Like Ronnie will, like, and Moki's convinced that Ronnie is going to someday help them crack a case because of her synesthesia.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and that's never been proven scientifically that that can happen. But what has been shown is that people with synesthesia tend to be creative types.
Okay. Okay.
And like Van Gogh and Billie Eilish and uh, Billy Joel and
Okay.
Nabokov, who wrote Lolita, and it goes on and on and on. And a lot of them are like Leonard Bernstein. A lot of them are musicians, and it like for me, it allows me to become more. It brings imagery out for me,
Okay. That
and
makes
it brings
sense.
food. So in my books, because I made Moki a foodie, because
Yes.
Moki, and it gave me an opportunity then to bring out the food stuff in the books,
Okay.
like what you smell and what you taste, and they're having this meal, and it makes me able to describe the meal in more concrete terms for kids. But
Okay.
kids like to read about food and all that stuff,
Yes, they do.
sort of thing,
Yeah, no,
So
I think it's fascinating, and I remember reading that with Ronnie, and I was,
yes.
oh, I don't know that I've really read anything about this before, and so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a real
that's
thing. And
yeah,
yeah, she says she goes, sometimes her name makes her taste or smell watermelon rind, and sometimes it's raw green beans, and she doesn't know why. Sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other. But and that came, of course, from me. And so anything she ever tastes or she talks about is from me. But
okay, yeah,
yeah, I call her my synesthesia twin.
yeah. Oh, I think that's awesome. That's really
So,
great.
and kids are always fascinated with that. And what I do, by the way, for you two and your audience, I do free virtual author visits
Oh,
to
oh,
classrooms.
awesome.
And
Okay.
what I normally do is before I get there, I ask the teacher for the roster, and I get the kids' names, and I write down what each of their names makes me taste or smell.
Oh, that is so cool.
And then I send it back to the teacher because the
Okay.
minute I tell the kids that I'm like Ronnie in the book,
Yeah.
their hands go up. What's my name make you taste? What's my name make you taste? And I said, I've already done it for you.
Yes.
Ask the teacher when I leave. So they're, ooh, they're all excited. And then they write me these notes back, these cute little thank you notes that, oh, I'm so glad my name makes you taste chocolate or my name, whatever,
Oh gosh, that's so
something like
neat.
that. So it's
Oh yeah.
hilarious. I get these things back from them, but
Yeah.
it just makes my creativity more fun, and it makes my interaction with kids more fun. And
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I can imagine the kids just will be all over that. Yeah.
they were all over that.
Yes.
How come, can I get synesthesia? How do you get it? And I says, you can't get it. You're born with it. I said, you can lose it. You can lose it. Like if you get a bump on the head or something, you can lose it. And some people lose it temporarily. And I said, I've lost it. Like if I get a cold or something like that and I can't taste something or
Yeah.
smell something. And then I worry, like, am I going to get it back? Because it's like, I call it my superpower.
Yeah. Oh,
It's my
absolutely.
superpower. And then I ask kids like, what's your superpower? And then I tell them my superpower. And one kid said, my superpower isn't as interesting as your superpowers. I says, no, your
Be
superpower
funny.
is your superpower. It's okay. So,
Absolutely. And so okay, so your next book will be coming out in September,
September,
October,
October,
and it's the number 7
number
book.
7.
And what is the title again, did you say?
Macadamia Street Hidden Skeleton, set
Okay.
in Cornwall, England.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be
thank
a lot of
you. I
fun.
hope so. I hope you're
Yeah.
right. I'm writing it right now.
Yes, and any teachers out there listening, she will do author visits,
Mhm.
I guess by Zoom
By
normally.
Zoom. I do it
Okay,
here in San Diego. I do them in person as
okay,
often as I can.
okay.
And I don't charge for them. Being a teacher, I know how much money of our paychecks we put back into our classrooms. And even
Absolutely.
if there's a PTA or a PTG, a lot of times I want teachers to spend that money on something that's like a permanent something in their classroom, like books. I don't want them to give it to me. So I
Right.
make my visits free and I
Yeah,
love
that
it.
is
I love doing it.
amazing. That is
I love
amazing.
doing it, and I don't believe in charging for it. And if you go to SherrillJoseph.com, there's a school visit link there,
Okay.
tab you can click on and sign up.
Okay. Yes. Oh, that's awesome. And
Thank
you can
you.
Sounds
find
good.
you at SherrillJoseph.com
Right.
and social media. What areas are you on social media?
I'm on Facebook,
Okay.
Twitter, Instagram. Um, I'm also on Substack.
Okay.
Um, I'm leaving one out. Anyway, if you go to SherrillJoseph.com, 4 little social media icons will float across the page at you, and you can
Gotcha.
click
Okay.
on those to go to my links to the
Okay.
social media sites. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
we always like to make sure that our audiences know how to find you. So,
Thank you. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
absolutely. Well, Sherrill, thank you so much for being with us today. This is awesome.
Oh, it was an absolute pleasure, and I can't thank you enough for this.
Yeah.
And I have to give a shout out to Michelle, who put me in touch with you, who was also a finalist there at Poe Fest, and
Yes.
she put me in touch with you. And uh, So I
Yeah.
thank you both so much for this
Yes.
opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you for
And
joining us.
yes,
Thank you,
and
Jeanie.
I was going to say when book 7 comes out, we should have you back on
Oh, I
to
would
talk
love
about
to.
it.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
I would love
We
that.
look forward to it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well, Jeanie, on that
We
note,
are.
we are
We are. Oh,
out.